They say time is money, but Rolex has mastered the art of making time far more expensive than it should be, and that hasn't stopped people from desperately wanting to own one. In fact, Rolex isn't just a watch brand, it's a status symbol, a sign of power, and for some, an obsession. But what if I told you there's a darker side to this shiny empire? A side they don't want you to see. Because behind the sparkling gold and flawless craftsmanship, Rolex is hiding secrets. Secrets that will make you question everything you thought you knew about this brand. Now let's dig deep into the secrets Rolex doesn't want you to know. Let's begin with one of Rolex's most controversial secrets, and it's called manufactured scarcity. See, Rolex is one of the most coveted watches in the world. But here's the catch. Actually getting your hands on one of these prized timepieces, that's a whole different story. Walk into any authorized Rolex dealer today, and chances are you'll be greeted by empty display shelves, vague smiles, and that infamous phrase, "Sorry, there's a waiting list." And trust me, that waiting list, it's not just weeks or months. For some models, people wait years if they're lucky. But is this really about high demand? Or is there something more calculated going on here? For years, critics and insiders have accused Rolex of deliberately limiting production, not because they can't make more watches, but because they won't. Why? It's simple. Scarcity creates desire. When something is hard to get, people want it more. And Rolex has mastered that psychological trick to perfection. By keeping supply low and demand sky high, Rolex turns every model, especially the steel sports models like the Submariner or Daytona, into gold mines. Watches that retail for $10,000 instantly double or triple in price on the secondary market. The moment you walk out of that store, if you're lucky enough to get one, your Rolex is suddenly worth way more. Not because of any new technology or innovation, but purely because of scarcity. However, Rolex has never openly admitted to this. Instead, they stick to the narrative of unprecedented demand. They claim they're simply victims of their own success. But insiders argue otherwise. After all, Rolex is one of the most powerful, vertically integrated watchmakers on the planet. They control their entire production process, from refining their own gold to crafting their own movements. If they truly wanted to meet demand, couldn't they? In the end, what looks like high demand is often just carefully manufactured hype. A luxury brand playing the oldest trick in the book. And guess what? It works. Because when it comes to Rolex, the fewer there are, the more the world seems to want them. Rolex doesn't just create watch scarcity. They do something else that's quite similar, and it also increases their value. What is it? It's the sudden disappearance of certain models. One day, the watch is sitting proudly in the showroom, and the next, it's wiped clean from the Rolex catalog, like it never existed. No warning, no grand announcement, just gone. And this is where Rolex proves just how smart and calculated they really are. Because every time they quietly stop making a model, they don't just retire a watch, they create instant scarcity. And in the world of luxury, nothing drives desire more than something being rare. Once a model gets discontinued, it doesn't fade into the background. Instead, it becomes a legend. Collectors start hunting, buyers panic, and prices shoot through the roof. A watch that once cost 10 grand suddenly doubles, or even triples, just because Rolex stopped making it. And the best part? Rolex doesn't have to do a thing. The market goes wild all on its own. Take the Rolex Submariner Hulk, for example, the one with that beautiful green dial and bezel. For years, it was loved by collectors and watch fans all over the world. But then, out of nowhere in 2020, Rolex pulled the plug. No reason, no farewell, just gone. And overnight, the Hulk became a treasure. Prices exploded in the secondary market, and anyone lucky enough to own one found themselves sitting on a gold mine. And trust me, this wasn't some random move. This is what Rolex does best. They know exactly what they're doing. By never announcing which model might disappear next, they keep everyone guessing. Every year, collectors wait nervously during Rolex's new releases, wondering if their favorite watch will survive or if it's about to become history. And that fear, that uncertainty, it keeps the demand burning. What's crazy is that people now buy Rolex watches not just because they love them, but because they're hoping to hit the jackpot. It's like gambling, but with watches. Some buyers hope that the model they pick will be the next one Rolex quietly kills off. Because once that happens, the price skyrockets. And Rolex knows this. They've created a perfect system, a never-ending cycle of hype, mystery, and scarcity. But here's the thing. Rolex will never admit to this strategy. They act like these discontinuations are just part of regular business. But deep down, they know exactly what pulling a model does to the market. They know it turns a normal watch into a holy grail that collectors will chase for years. The next Rolex secret we're about to uncover is that Rolex watches are actually overpriced. Yeah, you heard that right. Despite the hype, the brand power, and the sky-high resale value, many experts argue that what you're really paying for isn't cutting-edge technology or superior craftsmanship. It's the name, the logo, the illusion of prestige carefully built over decades. The truth is that many other luxury watch brands offer equal or even superior technological features for a fraction of the price. Brands like Omega, Grand Seiko, or even Rolex's own sister company, Tudor, are pushing the boundaries of horological innovation. High-beat movements, silicon components, anti-magnetic tech, hand-finished details, things that Rolex doesn't always lead in. Yet somehow, Rolex commands the bigger price tag. Take the Omega Speedmaster, for example, a watch that's literally been to the moon. Its coaxial movement is a marvel of modern watchmaking, built for precision and longevity. Yet it sells for way less than your average Rolex Submariner. Or look at Grand Seiko, a brand known for making some of the most beautiful, hand-finished dials you'll ever see. Their watches also come with an impressive spring drive movement that's super advanced. And guess what? Even with all that, the Grand Seiko still costs less than many Rolex models. And that's where the perception of overvaluation creeps in. Because while Rolex undeniably makes great watches, the argument is, are they $10,000 great? Or have they simply perfected the art of marketing, where exclusivity and brand power inflate the price far beyond the actual value on your wrist? Let's not forget, Rolex watches are mass-produced. We're not talking about handmade, one-of-a-kind pieces here. They pump out close to 1 million watches every year. But the moment that crown logo is stamped on the dial, the price skyrockets. Not because of rarity or craftsmanship, but because you're buying into the myth of Rolex. And here's where it gets even darker. Some insiders believe Rolex is perfectly fine with this overvaluation. Why? Because it feeds into their master plan, keeping the brand as the ultimate status symbol, not just a watch, but a trophy. Moving on, another secret hiding behind Rolex's shiny reputation is a story of environmental damage and ethical gray areas that quietly fuel this billion-dollar empire. See, luxury never comes cheap, and it definitely doesn't come clean. Before a Rolex ever makes it to that velvet display case, the materials used to craft it have already left a trail of destruction. We're talking about gold pulled from the earth, sometimes in places where the environment pays the ultimate price. Forests wiped out, rivers poisoned with chemicals like mercury, and local communities left struggling with the damage, all just so someone can wear a watch that screams success. And while Rolex proudly shows off its flawless Swiss craftsmanship, they stay suspiciously silent about where their precious metals and diamonds actually come from. Because once you start asking those questions, you enter a world the luxury watch industry would rather keep hidden. What's really happening in those mines? Who's digging up the gold? And what kind of conditions are these people working in? The sad truth is, it's often a world where child labor exists, workers face dangerous conditions, and nobody's really held accountable, all buried under layers of middlemen and vague supplier contracts. Then there's the environmental cost of creating a watch that's designed to last a lifetime. Sounds noble, right? But the reality isn't that simple. From massive mining operations to energy-hungry factories, producing that one beautiful Rolex leaves behind a huge carbon footprint. The ads might show elegance and perfection, but every polished surface hides a messy truth. For years, critics and activists have been pushing for more transparency, asking luxury brands like Rolex to prove they care about the planet and the people in their supply chain. But the watch industry seems like it doesn't want to change. Words like responsibly sourced and ethically crafted pop up in glossy marketing campaigns, but rarely come with real proof. And maybe that's the point. The less people know, the easier it is to protect the myth of perfection. Now, the next secret takes the Rolex story down a road most people never see coming. Because behind all the luxury, the celebrity endorsements, and those sparkling showcases, Rolex isn't just a watchmaker. Technically, and this might surprise you, Rolex is a charity. Yes, you heard that right. The same brand charging tens of thousands of dollars for a single watch is actually registered under a foundation called the Hans Wilsdorf Foundation. It all goes back to the founder, Hans Wilsdorf, a man who made a very unusual decision in 1945. Instead of passing the company down to his family or selling it to a massive corporation, Wilsdorf handed it over to a private trust. On paper, it sounds noble, a charitable foundation owning one of the most successful luxury brands in the world. But once you dig deeper, it starts to feel less like an act of generosity and more like a genius move in financial strategy. Here's why. By setting Rolex up this way, the company gets some major tax advantages. Since it's technically foundation-owned, Rolex avoids the kind of heavy tax scrutiny that regular corporations face. While other luxury brands have to battle rising global taxes and government regulations, Rolex quietly cruises along, protected by a legal structure that lets them operate like a charity without acting like one. And this is where things get really interesting, because when you hear the word charity, you probably imagine large donations, schools being built, or communities being helped. But with Rolex, it's hard to find any of that. Try looking for solid proof of how much they actually donate or where the money goes. You won't find much. There are vague mentions of supporting education or funding the arts, but nothing clear. No detailed reports, no concrete numbers, and no real transparency. Meanwhile, Rolex keeps making billions every year. Their profits soar thanks to insane demand, limited supply, and sky-high prices. But instead of paying massive taxes like other companies in their position, Rolex stays protected, all thanks to the Hans Wilsdorf Foundation. It's honestly the perfect illusion, a brand that looks like a charity on paper, but operates like a money-printing machine in real life. And here's the crazy part. Most people don't have a clue. At the end of the day, Rolex isn't just in the business of making watches. They're in the business of winning the game, and so far they're doing it flawlessly.